In just a few minutes, Lance Armstrong will be climbing aboard this very bike and hurtling through the streets of Paris at over 50 kilometres an hour. Now, this is his time trial bike. It differs from his regular bike in a few obvious ways. The most obvious of these is the handlebars. He rides in this position, tucked right in with his elbows and his body as close to the frame as possible to cut down on air turbulence. He changes gear here, and if he needs to brake, he drops down to use these handlebars. But then it's back into this position, this teardrop position, which you'll see reflected in the helmet and in the very moulding of the frame. Everything on this bike is engineered to cut through the air as fast as possible. You can see here how the shape of the frame is hugged as close into the wheel as possible, and provided that conditions are still, which we hope they will be, this disc wheel also cuts through the air as fast as possible. It's not exactly designed for comfort, but then again, this stage is only 6.5 kilometres long, and he'll only be sitting on it for around about 8 minutes.
And the way the times are shaping up, about a minute of that could be waiting in the start house. 7:28 is the current best time. It belongs to Aimar Zubeldia, but it won't last. Let's get back out on the road.
Well, he just pushed his crash helmet back, slipped forward on his head as he makes his start, leaves the Eiffel Tower behind him now as he moves out back to Alexander Vinokurov. Not rocking any boats at the checkpoint, is he? Ekimov is, though, because Vyacheslav Ekimov's gone through just 2 seconds off best time. Remember, he's the Olympic time trial champion, got the gold medal in Sydney. And the other two men in the medal frame, Lance Armstrong and Jan Ullrich, but not in that order.
Amazing thing about Vyacheslav Ekimov, Phil, was he was an Olympic gold medalist back in 1988 as well, when the Olympic Games were in Seoul. That, in fact, was on the track. Comeback boy, Stefano Garzelli, second in the Giro d'Italia this year, and hoping to ride a very good Tour de France, although had a bit of a bronchial problem after the Giro, hoping to get himself into form in the latter part of the race. But he is a talented man.
Yes, a little bit of a problem. We'll see how serious it is, because you're going to have to breathe deeply and fast. It's a full-out effort, this sprint around the block in Paris. 30 years of age now, Stefano Garzelli, 16 wins to his name, and he had a wonderful race with 2 stage wins in the Giro.
Well, there's been some very fast times out at the mid-course time check. The fastest still is Aimar Zubeldia, but Vyacheslav Ekimov has gone through there in 5th place, just 2 seconds in arrears. Ekimov, on the other hand, compared with Zubeldia, is a much better individual time trialist, and he may well be able to hold that pace up until the end. At one time, he was the fastest man in the world over the 1 hour discipline, a special record which he set. And at one time, he was a holder of about 15 world records. He really is a most remarkable bike rider. But it's Didier Roust that we're looking at right now, a good time trialist. He's many occasions throughout his career won individual time trials. As we go back to the finishing straight, this is Laurent Brochard, the former champion of the world, a title that he won in San Sebastian way back in 1997.
There's a nice view, Paul. Now, you were telling me the other day you've actually been up there, something I've never done.
It's a long way up, and there's a long queue to get to the top, and especially today, I would think many people came very early in the day. Look at this, Ekimov, Phil, into the finishing straight. He's not going to be best time, he's gone outside of that, but 13th Tour de France for him, and still in with a chance of going for the top.
A big effort by Vyacheslav Ekimov, Slava as we call him. He gets 3rd slot, 7:37. Well, this is turning out to be a very surprising prologue time. Now, let me remind you of the situation at the moment. Zubeldia is still top in 7:28. Victor Hugo Peña of US Postal is 2nd. Mikael Rick is 3rd, but that will be taken out now by Ekimov when they're updated. Rick Verbrugge, who once and still does hold the fastest ever prologue time trial in the Tour of Italy, would dearly like to do it now here. That, by the way, is held by the British rider Chris Boardman, Paul. But you knew that.
But I knew that. Boardman won the prologue on 3 occasions, and his time trial was 55 kilometres an hour. This man, I think, was 58 kilometres an hour in the Giro d'Italia, and many of us wondering whether or not there was a slight short course on that
how
occasion.
Could you say that?
But I tell you one thing, this man certainly will like the course today. It's a very much a powerful man's course. Lots of straight, long lines where you can get the big gears going.
Well, huge effort then by Rick Verbrugge. He's a long-term prospect. He'd like to produce a nice high finish when he gets round to Paris again in 3 weeks' time. As we continue now to see the face here of Jan Ullrich back in the Tour de France. This man, I think, is refining himself. His wife gave birth just a few days ago to their first child. He said it was the greatest thing that ever happened. It's done his morale the world of good. He's never finished worse than second in a Tour de France, and now he's going to have to try and equal what is a formidable reputation here.
Well, I'll tell you what, nobody can call this man porky at all. This is probably the thinnest I've seen him over the last few years. He's obviously paid attention to his diet. He looks very slim and fit. Zubeldia still leads the bike race, though, by 4 seconds from Victor Hugo Peña. Yaroslav Ekimov in third place. What is important right now, Phil, is US Postal Service are in second and third place. They'll be right up at the top of the team competition, and that was one of the important tactics for them going out and riding hard on this first day.
Well, one wonders what Lance Armstrong would think at that time by Zubeldia. As we go back here now, big concentration. This man has done well before in the Prologue because he won it in the year 2001, Christophe Moreau. All he wants now is confirmation he still has the legs.
Christophe Moreau is pulling away. This man won himself the Prologue a couple of years ago, and he wore the yellow jersey as well, but later on in that tour he abandoned. He's the big hope for the Crédit Agricole team. He's 32 years of age. He's had 25 wins as a professional, 3 of those coming this year, and 1 of those after a time trial win in the 4 days of Dunkirk in the month of May. You can see here now the French, you can almost hear the crowd shouting this man on. They realise if France has got a chance of winning today, it's going to be thanks to this young man here, Christophe Moreau, out on course and looking very strong. But this, Phil, is the darling of the French crowd, Richard Virenque. He won't win the Prologue, but he certainly will win the hearts of the French.
They still like him, despite the fact he disgraced himself with the infamous Festina affair in the Tour de France back in 1998 when he was disqualified along with the team for using illegal substances. The crowd still love him. He came back and won the King of the Mountains again in 1999, and that was the last time he won that title. He was 16th in the Tour last year, Paul, so he's not lost his talent as we watch the arrival here of Didier Rousse.
Good ride by Didier Rousse, but it's an awful long way to the finishing line where the clock will stop. The time to beat Zubeldia. Let's not forget, by the way, just looking at Richard Virenque there, Phil, that he won one of the mystical finishes of the Tour de France last year at the summit of the Mont Ventoux, where Lance Armstrong was booed all the way up for chasing down the little darling of France. Look at this, Didier Rousse is giving it everything coming into the last 100 metres. It'll be a good finish by him.
This is a very good time. He's honouring the national champion's jersey. You slip very quickly when you just go into those 1 or 2 seconds, but even so, Didier Rousse will be happy with that. 7 minutes 45, conceding just 16 seconds. It'll probably round it up to 17 on his overall classification tonight. We swing back out onto the course now. Richard Virenque is underway.
Listen to the crowd. They love Richard Virenque here. And Phil, we were talking earlier about the flags on the finishing line. Well, looking out from here right now, there is absolutely no movement at all. I think in the latter part of the afternoon, the breeze right now has dropped completely, and that will advantage the huge, big engined riders who are coming out towards the end. Iban Mayo, the Basque rider, who this year has been a superb revelation, and many people really do believe that when we get into the big mountains, he will threaten Lance Armstrong. He may well not have what it takes to win the Tour de France this year, but he's certainly proving with a ride like this that he's got the ability to challenge all of the top men in the individual prologues, because this is a great move by Mayo. He's won 6 races so far this year, and at the end of the day, he will be happy with 29th place, 17 seconds down, but still he is outside the time of his own teammate, Haimar Zubeldia, who has the fastest start at the finish. And so far, going out, Brad McGee, the former World Pursuit champion. Well, look at this. This is the man who is the current champion of the world at the individual pursuit over 4,000 meters, a Commonwealth Games champion and an unbelievable titled bike rider. He right now is out on course, and I think, Phil, he's got to have a very serious chance at knocking. Look at this. The time check, Phil, coming through at 3.2 kilometers goes to a German rider by the name of Jan Ullrich. That is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. He's gone through 1 second quicker than Haimar Zubeldia. And, you know, in April this year, I spoke to a teammate of Jan Ullrich, Sven Teutenberg. I said, Sven, can Ullrich come back and ride a good tour? He said he'll be in the top 3 in Paris, but he won't win the tour. Now, he told me that in April. Well, you know, just looking at Ulrich coming out, there's confirmation. A second faster at 3.2 kilometres than Zubeldia, 2 seconds faster than Dax. Looking him coming out of the starting gate, Phil, he looked slim, he looked powerful, he looked as if he was a man on form, and he will be hungry to race in this Tour de France.
Well, here is Laurent Brochard. This is a former world champion. He's won stages here in a place we're going back to, Loudenvielle, in the mountains. He's a good climber. He's got all the qualities for a high finish in Paris, and he is having a good season as well. Something of a team leader's season, I would suggest, and he's riding for a team that's already started off with a win in the Tour Down Under this year in Australia. So Brochard now sprinting for a very, very respectable finish here, and he's not going to stop till he hits the line in 9th. Oh, look at that, Paul. Suddenly switches to 12th.
I tell you what,
7:39.
Phil, you dropped down very rapidly indeed over the last few metres in this individual prologue. It is so close. Tyler Hamilton is the man that the United States wants to see finish high in the overall classification, and many people really do believe that he can finish in the top 3.
Well, Tyler Hamilton is underway, and he's having, without a shadow of a doubt, his finest ever cycling season. Despite the fact he left the side of Lance Armstrong, they remain great friends, these two, but they're going to be a bitter rivalry between them over the next 3 weeks. Keep up with that camera, sir, because you've just seen a white tornado go by. This is the 7th Tour, Paul, for Tyler Hamilton. In his first Tour back in 1997, he finished as 69th, while he's had a great finish of 13th in 99, and he promised a lot last year with 15th. Here's the arrival of Rick Verbrugge.
Well, Verbrugge rode a time trial of 58.8 kilometres an hour in the Giro d'Italia. He's put in a very fine performance here, but he too is going to slip outside of the top 10 and maybe slip outside of the top 20 as he hits the line here for 27th place. The times, I think, Phil, will start to change right now, because as we look at Jan Ullrich here, this is the first time we've seen a time so close to 6.5 minutes, and I think we could see the fastest time now go to Jan Ullrich.
Well, the one man in the world, Lance Armstrong has always said he respects and fears, is this man. He is the classiest bike rider in the world, but there are times when he lets himself down. If he's come back, then hats off to him. Jan Ullrich is receiving the applause of the crowd now. I think he's got the best time. It is not far to the line. The big man is back. Ullrich has had 4th place finishes in the prologue. He's going to slot in number 1 at the moment. Listen to the crowd. 7:28.6. That is a real beating of Zubeldia. Just
beating.
1/5 of a second.
Unbelievable.
Oh, that's not quite Jan a real Ullrich beating, really, is it? No.
It really isn't a big beating of Zubeldia, but look at the face of Jan Ullrich. Look at the legs, Phil. There's absolute power in those thighs of the big German rider here right now, and that is a surprise to many people, and it will be a surprise to Gilberto Simoni, the winner of the Giro d'Italia. He will not enjoy the prologue. His dream is to harm Armstrong in the mountains.
Well, sadly, we've missed the departure of David Miller because of the arrival of Jan Ullrich. I'm afraid that is unfortunate, but David is now on course. This man, Gilberto Simoni, winner of the Giro d'Italia, determined to impress in this year's Tour de France, is underway, chasing Miller.
Well, out on the course, another good time coming in. The good times are starting to drop right now. Exactly the same time as Jan Ullrich at 3.2 kilometres is the Australian Brad McGee. This is really starting to hot up in the last part of this bike race this afternoon. Here is Miller right now wearing 61, the leader of the Cofidis team. Ullrich, in fact, has been given exactly the same time as Zubeldia. Well, we'll have to wait for the official results of the judges there. 7:28.26. We're now with David Miller. He looks superb. This man is a great time trialist. Well,
Miller wants this, and every British onlooker wants David Miller to win this. He's done it before a couple of years ago, and I have to say at that time, Lance Armstrong went up to Porsche and he said, "Who's this guy, David Miller?" Because he just won the opening time trial. It was over a longer distance than this. It was nearer 10 miles. But Paul, we're looking at David Miller. At the same time, we're looking at the scoreboard. I've never seen this before. They're giving Zubeldia and Ullrich the same time, counted out to 1,000th of a second. So I don't know how they'll decide who wins the stage at the moment.
Well, I think the man that goes faster than will probably get the win, because I have a feeling there are still some very fast bike riders on the course who will go ahead of Zubeldia and Ullrich. At the half-distance 3.2 kilometre time check, Brad McGee, who is out on the course right now, is still looking at a very fast time. But this is a good ride by Richard Viron, the darling of France, the man who will lighten up, I should expect. The mountain stages is coming in with a pretty respectable time for a man who doesn't like riding on his own.
But again, you see, once they get into the realms of a couple of seconds in those places, it drops rather quickly, as he's now being counted down towards the top 100 finishers. As he approaches the 8-minute marker, he's gone over 8:01. So Richard Virenque is in. Never was a great time trialist, although when he was battling with the yellow jersey in his early tours, he had to produce a very good time trial then. Well, everybody waiting now to see what Bradley McGee can do. At the moment here, we're looking at Tyler Hamilton, though, and this is another man we're waiting desperately to see him at the first check. He has done big time trials, big prologues, and he is looking for a big result today. We've discussed it many times, but there's an outside chance you could have 3 Americans on the finish podium when they return to Paris in 3 weeks' time. Here's our old friend, one of the tallest men in the race, Towler. Never lets the side down for Kelme as he comes up to the line with a very, very good performance for him. 20th place.
Good ride by him. He's a very good individual time trialist, and in a few moments' time we should be seeing the arrival of Brad McGee as we go back down to the champion of the world at the individual time trial from Colombia, Santiago Botero. He's not done very much at all this season, Phil, but now he has to come out and prove it for Team Telecom that he is the boss.
As the world champ moves off, we are 2 minutes away now from Lance Armstrong, and Lance, I'm sure, has just looked at the computer, as we have. David Miller has gone through with the best time by 5 full seconds. As we switch to the finish now, McGee is going to topple Jan Ullrich as well, as Bradley McGee takes the lead, 7:26.16. Now he's going to have to wait and see what David Miller can do.
Well, Bradley, don't salute the crowd so soon, because there are still some very big names to come, and Miller is 5 seconds faster than Brad McGee at 3.2 kilometers. This man is the world champion at the individual pursuit. He timed it to perfection, the same time as Jan Ullrich at half distance, but faster than him at the line. Josiba Belocchi is second last to start, second in the bike race last year, and he knows that he will be trailed by the Texas Tornado.
Here's a man in his only ridden 3 Tours de France. He's finished third, and second last year. He knows what he has to do. He's privileged, because he was second last year, to take second from the end. He knows from day one Lance Armstrong will always be hunting for him.
He will always be hunting for him, but this man is no mean individual time trialist. He knows he has to perform well on every stage from now until this bike race comes back to Paris in 3 weeks' time. There will be big battles in the mountains, but today is a psychological battle. If he could finish just a fraction of a second in front of this man, Lance Armstrong, he would get a psychological win number 1.
Lance Armstrong, as cool as you like, he's just looking there. He knows what everybody has done who have reached the finish house. He will know that his friend David Miller, the British rider on a rival team, has also turned in the best time at 3.2 kilometers by a full 5 seconds. The countdown. Lance Armstrong launches his bid for the 5th Tour de France.
Lance Armstrong right now is the last man to start here on the roads of Paris. He's wearing the yellow jersey from the winner of last year, and he in fact has said that he would wear that yellow jersey in honour of the organiser Henri Desgranges. The fastest time at half distance is that of the Scottish rider David Miller, 3 minutes 41 seconds. And we look now at Tyler Hamilton coming into the finishing straight. He's not going to go best time, but it's going to be a very good ride by Tyler Hamilton. He's the best of the Americans so far. 5th place for him. Tyler has started well. Problem for David Miller on the course, so what is this problem here? His chain has come off, Phil. He had the fastest time, and that has blown it, I would say, for David Miller. He was 5 seconds up at half distance, and he will absolutely be crying with that, but he's trying to get back into his rhythm.
Well, he could have lost 5 seconds there. This is going to be the ride of his life, whatever the problem was. He is still driving for best time. Bradley McGee has got it. He's finished 7 minutes and 26 seconds for the Sydney sider. Now David Miller into that last corner. It is going to be desperately tight. He needs to get out of that saddle as fast as possible and kick for the line. It is going to be a countdown. That little fault could cost him as Miller drives for home now. A huge effort by David Miller. He is going to be so close to the line as we hit 7:26. He's going to do it. 7:26.24. He hasn't. That has cost him the victory, whatever was wrong.
He has gone outside the win by 0.08 of a second, and he will rue the moment that chain came off, Phil. He lost that. He was trying to flick the chain back on in complete and utter desperation. That was a very sad moment. Look at his face here. I think he knows it. He's sprinting for the line. He knows he had to beat the time of Brad McGee. It was unbelievable right now. Armstrong is out on the course. Shortly we'll get a time to see what he is looking like. But I tell you one thing, Armstrong now knows the times that he has to beat on the finishing line. Santiago Botero, by the way, has gone outside the top 20, 27th place for him at the 3.2 kilometre mark, but we're looking now at perfection, well, only for a short moment, because that was Lance Armstrong. Great ride here by the man who won the Giro d'Italia earlier this season, Gilberto Simoni.
Simoni, the Tour of Italy winner, is going to be a player. He said he would. He said you would remember him after this year's Tour de France. He is pushing for a time which will not win the race, but gives him a great start.
This is a serious start by the man who won the Giro d'Italia for the second time this year. I don't think he would have expected to finish inside the top 20 in a prologue, but he has done. 13 seconds. Well, look at that, out on the course. Armstrong is here. Lance Armstrong right now is looking to try and get himself to the 3.2 kilometre mark. David Miller went through there fastest, but Miller had a mechanical incident and failed towards the end by 0.08 of a second to get himself the lead. It was absolutely remarkable. The leaderboard right now is McGee, followed by Miller, followed by Zubeldia and Ulrich, but this is going to go right down to the wire. Armstrong is wearing the yellow jersey as the winner of last year. He didn't want to wear that jersey last year, but in honour of the organiser Henri Desgrange, who started this race back in 1903, Armstrong has decided to wear the yellow tunic this afternoon. This is Santiago Botero. He is the champion of the world at this discipline, but he's a long way down at half distance. Yoshiba Belocchi, by the way, has just gone through in 9th place, 8 seconds down on David Miller, and in a few moments' time we will get a chance to see Lance Armstrong's time going through there right now. He looks perfect. He's in absolute tune for this bike race this afternoon, and Armstrong is going through the time check right now. In a few moments' time we'll see what Armstrong has done. We will get a chance to see just what time Armstrong has gone through in, because he has just crossed the 3.2 kilometre mark, and in fact Armstrong has faded slightly over the first 3.2 kilometres. He's 9 seconds adrift. Now that is somewhat of a surprise. I cannot believe it unless he expects to accelerate towards the latter part of the course. Fastest time at 3.2 was David Miller. Armstrong only in 13th place. Really quite remarkable that Armstrong has lost so much time going through there, but the time stops on the finishing line, let's not forget. The fastest man at the finish is Brad McGee right now. David Miller in exactly the same time, which is remarkable. Ulrich has put in a fine performance to finish himself up there in 4th, but we're now waiting for just a few more riders to finish. Armstrong will be the last man to cross the line. Santiago Botero is the champion of the world, but he has faded an unbelievable amount at half distance.
Well, Paul, we're looking here now at the rainbow stripes of the world time trial champion, the mystery man. We don't know what he's capable of. Even his manager said he hasn't seen him race much this year. He's come across to the new team of Telecom, for him anyway. That wonderful time by Bradley McGee. Looking at Armstrong's check time now, the sadness surrounding David Miller. That'll be the headlines in the papers in Britain tomorrow. The unshipped chain, I think, will have cost him victory in the prologue. Botero here is not going to match McGee.
Well, Botero is not, but this is not a bad performance for a man who's only had a 3rd place finish so far this season. He's going to get himself well up there. 7th place for Santiago Botero. Not what he wanted to do, but he's done honour to his world champion's jersey. There are only 2 more men left to finish. This is one of them. 2nd last year, Yoshiba Belocchi, an unbelievable man who knows right now that he's being trailed by Lance Armstrong. But Phil, I'm surprised to see that at half distance, Armstrong is only 13th, having lost 9 seconds. But he's always capable of keeping something special in reserve.
I think that's the case, Paul, because we've known the riders today who have come good. They've come good in the second half of this race. They've managed to accelerate. If they started too quick, they faded. Now, Bolocki might be the proof of this as he drives in. He's not going to reach McGee either. Bradley McGee, that young Australian with the big ambition to have won this prologue and wear the yellow jersey. Very few Australians can have done that. And now he only knows there's one man can beat him, and his name is not Bolocki. It could only be Lance Armstrong. McGee will be on tenterhooks here now as the rider who finished second in the Tour de France last year. Bolocki hits the line. He is 7th.
That's a great ride by Bolocki. He'll be pleased with that, just losing 9 seconds to a specialist like Brad McGee. McGee now, Phil, will be on tenterhooks because he knows there's only one man left to come to the finishing line. His name is Lance Armstrong. He wears number 1. He's won the Tour de France on 4 occasions, and this year he's dreaming of winning it for a 5th. McGee is not too very far away from us here right now. A storming ride by the man who is the World Pursuit Champion. He'll be looking at this clock. I think it's going to be rather close on the line, but I'd have to give right now the advantage to McGee. But Armstrong will sprint with his heart in his hand.
He will indeed, because he comes off that final bend where David Miller saw his time tick over by fractions of a second. There's 6 seconds, 5, 4 as Armstrong races to the line. Is this going to be a perfect opening? No, it is not. Bradley McGee has won for Australia, but Armstrong has made it perfectly clear he is very much in for a 5th win in this year's Tour de France. He crosses the line in, well, the clock continues to count, so I can't tell you, but about 6 or 7.
I think he crossed the line in 7th place there with a time just better than Josipa Bolocki. Armstrong, let's not forget, Phil, the Tour de France is not won here or lost here, but it's important to put in a fine performance. Armstrong will not have taken too many risks in these corners. He looks fine to me right now, and I think he'll go away from this and realise that another team now has to take responsibility of controlling the race over the first few flat stages. But almost certainly he will be happy with the rest of his team's performance because he's got 3 men in the top 10, Victor Hugo Peña and of course Yaroslav Ekimov as well.
Well, we look at the Eiffel Tower, it's seen it all before. Just looking down here.
Now I'm joined by a man who knows what it's like to win a Tour de France, Stephen Roach. Stephen, a lot of drama on the opening and the prologue. Armstrong off the pace, but Miller so close if he hadn't had that mechanical problem.
Incredible. I'm sure one of the most unhappiest person in the peloton tonight will be, of course, David, because he had some mechanical trouble at the end, maybe with his front derailleur. I don't know what it was, but he had difficulty, and I reckon he would have won it by 3 or 4 seconds and would have had the undisputable yellow jersey here in Paris, whereas now there's 3 or 4 all in the same seconds.
And it might not matter in the grand scheme of things, but Armstrong only 7th in the prologue. What do you make of that?
Well, the circuit was not really a circuit for him, really, but I think Armstrong will be more than happy to let the other guys take over the responsibility for the first week, because we hit Alpe d'Huez after 1 week. There's a lot of kind of flat and semi-flat stages between now and then, so while somebody else is defending for him, defending the jersey, he can have a cushy ride to the mountains.
Well, the responsibility of defending the yellow jersey is going to fall on the Française de Jure team, because Bradley McGee has won the prologue. We'll be back after the break to see him get the first yellow jersey of the Centenary Tour. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hi, my name's David Miller. You're watching the Tour de France on ITV.
Velux roof windows, bringing light to life.
That's £171, please, sir.
Oh, because I thought it was 45.
If you'd looked properly, that's only one way, without airport tax and, of course, travel insurance.
Okay.
What? We're buying a flight, not a date with Waxy Mary here. I think you're in there. Always listen to the sock and ask what's in it for me. Like 0% on new purchases and cash back on everything you buy with your egg card. Ace!
Marie Antoinette, Madame Guillotine vous attend.
Pas aujourd'hui. Je n'ai peur. J'ai mal à la tête.
Excusez-moi, Votre Majesté.
Headache? What headache?
Unforgettable music from the biggest films. Don't miss your unique classic flick CD free inside tomorrow's Sunday Express.
Express delivery. name's Janice. I'm 51. The reason why I'm so breathless, the reason why I've got the tube, is for oxygen. This is me for the rest of my life now.
Visit feelcanada.com today.
Hello? Oh, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, of course I love you. Of course I do, yeah. I'm a bit busy right now. Can I...
Sage My X6, the latest technology now available to all.
Buenos días, soy Santiago Botero. Ustedes están viendo el Tour de Francia en ATV.
Welcome back. A dramatic first day of the Tour de France. Bradley McGee of Australia has won the prologue, but a mechanical problem with his bike has deprived David Miller of what would have been certain victory. Let's take a look at how things finished. Bradley McGee first in 7:26.16, just 0.08 behind him, David Miller, followed by Aymar Zubeldia and an impressive Jan Ullrich in fourth place, 5 seconds ahead of Lance Armstrong. That's a good result for Ullrich.
It's a brilliant result for Ullrich, and I'm very, very surprised with Ullrich's performance. But in saying that, in the last 2 weeks he has put in some very good performances. But for a guy who has hardly raced all year, he's had a lot of problems with his team, his old team with Team Coast, again in his new team. So it's a very, very surprising result for Ullrich, and it leaves a lot of kind of hope for a duel between himself and Armstrong when we get to the mountains.
Big psychological boost for Ullrich. Terrible psychological blow for David Miller. Take a look at the pictures and tell us what you think was happening in the home straight there.
He seems to have had a problem with his front derailleur. Maybe he was hitting off his crank and his crank maybe caught it as he was going through. But it's very difficult to see from a distance what happened really. But one thing is sure, he lost 3-4 seconds, and unfortunately the first yellow jersey in his Tour de France. So I'm sure David tonight will be a very unhappy man, but at the same time it's only less than a second off the yellow jersey. Tomorrow there'll be some sprints, intermediate sprints during the stage. I'm sure Dave will be going for those sprints. But of course Bradley McGee himself by no means a mean sprinter.
He's a volatile character though, isn't he, David? How do you think this will affect him?
I don't think even himself knows. David's the kind of guy, he can kind of really put him to the wire, he can go for dead tomorrow, or he might kind of go into it with his nest and say, oh, the luck has gone against me one more time, and maybe that will affect his performance. But I just hope for himself and for the Tour de France point of view, I hope tomorrow he goes out with a knife between his teeth and says, I'm going to get this yellow jersey. From what happened today, I'm sure he must be very disappointed.
Well, we'll see. For the moment, let's go over to Ned Boulting, who's got the latest on the David Miller situation. Ned.
Well, Gary, the Miller story is pretty complicated. As you can imagine, we've been chasing after him as best as we could, but as you can well imagine, he's a very disappointed man. He's locked himself in with his team bus, and I'm sure there's a big inquest going as to exactly what went on there in the closing stages of that. But, you know, from a personal point of view, for Miller to have trained so hard with this prologue specifically in mind and to have opened up such a huge gap at the halfway stage, he had a big lead, and then when the closing stages of the game of the prologue, something seemed to go wrong mechanically, possibly with his chain. We're going to get to the bottom of this as soon as we can physically get hold of him and find out what went on. But there, I was watching him just as he came towards the finishing line. He was clearly struggling, clearly bitterly unhappy man, still pedalling, still trying to eke out the best time he possibly could, and he just failed at the last hurdle there. But as soon as we can get Miller to find out exactly what happened, we'll bring that news to you straight away.
Well, David Miller, understandably unhappy and not particularly anxious to talk to us. We will, though, get to the bottom of it eventually. And, Stephen, Bradley McGee, the winner, we should talk about him. After all, he is going to be the first yellow jersey of the Centenary Tour. And these young Australians just keep coming through, don't they?
Well, the last 2 years, there's a couple of them are coming through. With first of all, of course, Stuart O'Grady and Bradley McGee put an incredible Tour performance last year. And he's gone very, very well in time trials so far this year. But, of course, his performance here today is an incredible performance. But also, I think you must note the performance of the first 10 riders. They're all regrouped in 4 or 5 seconds. It's very, very rare in Tour de France. We've seen so many riders all within a short period of time. So I think that the Tour de France now for the first week is going to be very, very exciting. With all these intermediate sprints, so many guys having ambitions of being in yellow at least one day in their life, because all these guys that are all very close to the yellow jersey today, next week after Alpe d'Huez, some of them will be way behind. So I reckon we're going to have a very, very fast first week of Tour de France.
And will Frances Desjeux try and defend that yellow jersey? I mean, they've got a sprinter of their own in Baden Cook.
Well, I think they have, with David Miller being so close, I think there will be a big fight there, because, of course, Bradley McGee will not be able to climb the mountains as well. So, as I say, what's in the pocket's in the pocket. So let him hold the jersey as long as he can and take whatever comes.
And let him savour the jersey at the moment. There he is. Looks like he spotted somebody in the crowd, perhaps a teammate, saluting them and waiting for the ceremonials. All right, tomorrow it's stage one. Bradley McGee will have to try and defend that jersey. We will have stage one for you live tomorrow, 168 kilometres from Montgeron to Meaux. You can see it live on ITV1 tomorrow from 3:05 in the afternoon, with hour-long highlights here on ITV2 at 7 p.m. And if you've got any questions for any of us on the Tour de France team, log on to the ITV website. All right, that's it from Paris. 6.5 kilometres down, 3,355 to go. We will be back live on ITV1 tomorrow afternoon. See you then. One of the Centenary Tour de France, 100 years and 5 days since the world's greatest bike race set off from a cafe on the outskirts of Paris because the mayor had banned the decadent sport of bike racing from inside the city limits. Well, today, this year's edition of the Tour rolled out of Paris, presumably having got special dispensation from the mayor on a route which, as we'll discover later, is going to pay special homage to its glorious past. Now, only a fool would try to compress 100 years of cycling history into 2 minutes. So I've done my best, and I think it's clear that for an event that started out as a stunt to help sell newspapers, the Tour hasn't done too badly. In the days when men were men, moustaches were handlebars, and page 3 and price wars had yet to be invented, the French sports daily L'Auto hit on the idea of boosting circulation by staging a bike race. 2,400 kilometres in 6 easy stages, an average of 400k a day. But huge distances weren't the riders' only problem. If you're going to hold a road race, it's handy to have some actual roads at your disposal. But in 1903, not only were they not closed, some of them weren't even made. There were no support teams, no feed stations. Unfortunately for some of the riders, no compulsory urine samples to give either. The big drawback for the Tour as a spectacle, though, was that no one could tell who was winning. So in 1919, the race leader was given a distinctive yellow jersey. And for those of you watching in black and white, the yellow jersey is just behind the pink, which is to say, as innovations go, it wasn't much use unless you were actually lining the route. But for years, that was the only way to see the Tour. When the race returned after World War II, though, everyone got a look.
21 étapes, 100 coureurs, 5000 km, 5 millions de primes, telles sont les grandes lignes du 34e Tour de France.
Newsreels turned the Tour into a summer mini-series, available in 3 weekly instalments down the local Gaumont. That and the happy coincidence of July being the national holiday month meant even bigger crowds at the roadside. And massive recognition for great post-war riders like Jean Robic, Fausto Coppi and Louison Bobet. As its popularity spread, so did the race into Italy, Spain and the rest of Europe. There were experiments with national teams which didn't last, and the arrival of the publicity caravan which did. More money in the race meant better support for the riders, although well into the 50s, they were still carrying their own spares. The 60s brought the first of the Tour's 5-time winners, the great French rider Jacques Anquetil. The 70s saw Eddy Merckx repeat Anquetil's achievement. By the time the final stage had moved from the Parc des Princes velodrome to the Champs-Élysées, the classic look of the Tour as we know it was complete. Of course, there have been plenty of changes since then, as the race has become bigger, faster, and an increasingly global affair. And doubtless the means will continue to evolve over the years. The end, though, is always the same. All right, that's the history. Here's the immediate future. 3,361 kilometres around France in 20 stages. 198 riders start, that's 22 nine-man teams. Fewer than 198, I think it's safe to say, will finish. And don't forget, you can see hour-long highlights of the race every day on ITV2 at 7 p.m. Live action every Sunday afternoon on ITV1. And as a special bonus, those ITV2 highlights will be repeated through the night, every night on ITV1. Now, yesterday the Tour got underway with the opening prologue time trial, and the man who should have been on the winner's podium covered in lipstick at the end of it was undoubtedly David Miller of Britain. He declared his intention to win it. He was boulevards ahead of the opposition at the halfway checkpoint. Then just 500 metres from the finish line and certain victory, this happened.
Problem for David Miller on the course. So what is this problem here? His chain has come off, Phil. He had the fastest time, and that has blown it, I would say, for David Miller. He was 5 seconds up at half distance, and he will absolutely be crying with that, but he's trying to get back into his rhythm.
As Miller drives for home now, a huge effort by David Miller. He is going to be so close to the line as we hit 7:26. He's going to do it. 7:26.24. He hasn't. That has cost him the victory, whatever was victory, whatever was...
Well, you know, what's really amazing is that even after losing and refitting his chain, David only lost out on the win by 0.08 of a second. That's how much faster than everyone else he'd been riding up to that point. Well, Neb Bolting's mission, without using the phrase chain of events, was to find out why, of all the chains in all the events in the world, David Miller's had to come off in the Tour de France.
The mechanics and team officials puzzled long into the night as to exactly what had gone on.
I came out of the second last corner and my chain just, as I was accelerating, the chain just derailed, just came off and fell off. And because I didn't have a front derailleur on, I couldn't put it back on, so I had to go down with my hand and try and get it on, and it was jammed in there. So I came almost to a standstill trying to get the chain out and back on.
This was the primary culprit, the front derailleur you can see at the top of the cog. Over Parisian cobbles, this helps keep the chain in place. But Cofidis had decided to race without it. So the decision to remove that part, I mean, you know, it came from your mechanics and you were following their advice?
Well, I have faith in my mechanics, you know. If they say it's fine, I'm like, OK, it's fine. I test, I've been out day before, I gave full sprints and everything. But it was also a problem with one of the chain rings we're using. We're using a different chain ring on the front, not Campagnolo. Another make, and 5 other guys in our team today had the same problem. So 5 out of the 9 guys had exactly the same problem. 3 of them had banged their knees in their handlebars where their chain came off, and it's just a hoax. So somebody's going to be getting in trouble, that's for sure.
You must be mortified.
Yeah, devastated. I'm not really it's hard to actually kind of let it go in, you know. I'm kind of preventing it from sinking in. It's, yeah, it's horrible.
Well, that was David controlling his anger successfully for the cameras last night, but he has since lost it comprehensively in the French press, basically accusing his team of lumbering him with shoddy equipment and saying in order to get any decent parts for his bike, he has to scour the classifieds of American bike magazines. An astonishing story, and one I'm sure we'll be hearing more of as the tour goes on. But in all the concern about David, we shouldn't forget that there actually was a winner in the prologue yesterday, and a pretty impressive one too, in Australia's Bradley McGee. I'm sure the French will be claiming it as a victory of their own, since he's riding for a French team, fdjeux.com. McGee, one of a great string of good Australian riders coming through. And let's take a look at the result there. McGee first, ahead of David Miller by that veritable sliver. Jan Ullrich back in the Tour after missing last year's through injury was an impressive 4th, and a good ride too from Victor Hugo Peña in 5th. And that meant Lance Armstrong wasn't even the highest placed member of the US Postal team. He was a surprisingly lacklustre 7th, 7 seconds off the pace, just ahead of his 2 likely challengers, Joseba Bellocchi and Santiago Botero. Well, earlier on today, the riders paid their respects to Tour history, gathering at the Café Réveil Matin, where the Tour started back on July the 1st, 1903. Apparently it's a Mexican restaurant these days, but that didn't seem to detract from the occasion. And once the ceremonials were complete, it was down to business. Here's a look at today's stage, 168 kilometres from Montgeron on the outskirts of Paris to Meaux, with 3 intermediate sprints along the way, and no doubt 1 big bunch sprint at the finish. Well, despite the fact he's wearing the yellow jersey for the moment, Brad McGee's long-term goal in this race is the green points jersey for the most consistent daily rider. And at the first sprint of the day, he was second behind the defending points champion, Robbie McEwen. By the way, the current wearer of the green jersey is David Miller. The reason being that, having won yesterday, Brad McGee is technically the holder of all the jerseys, but obviously can't wear them all. So while he's in yellow, David, as second-place rider, is in green. The latest news we have is that 3 riders are away from the peloton. 2 of them are French. Christophe Mongean of Française de Jeux, a Brad McGee teammate, Walter Beneteau of Brioche La Boulangère, and Andy Flickinger of AG Deuxerre. There are 35 kilometres to go. Their lead is a little over 2 minutes. Let's get out on the road and join Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin for commentary.
Looking down, that's quite a rise when you see it from this angle, Paul. The little climb up towards that finishing sprint in Mont Ventouse is rather steep.
It certainly is rather steep. We'll have caught 1 or 2 of these riders off guard, I think. It's always difficult, you know, because these riders feel every night they look at a book which is called the Race Bible. That's got all the information of the race route, the run-ins to the finish, exactly where the final kilometre is. It gives you an idea where the corners are going to be. But when you see a sprint point, you normally expect it to be completely flat. And this one certainly isn't. There's confirmation of that 3rd sprint. Flickinger ahead of Mongean there in 2nd place, and Walter Beneteau of the Brioche La Boulangère team getting himself 3rd place and 2 seconds time bonus. This is certainly not very much of a big sprint, is it, Phil?
No, just keeping this Nick Gates. It's not Nick Gates. I thought it was Nick Gates of the Lotto rider, but he's just started to smile. It's not him. But looking at the, so you get 6 points for towards the green jersey competition, which is the competition that McEwen is hunting for today. But you get many more for winning the sprint, and that is what McEwen is holding out for. This is the peloton as they've now passed through the sprint, so they too now are working on 36 kilometres to go, and the gap is closing down.
Well, it's the team of Alessandro Patacchi on the front end of the main field here. They're obviously going to be very attentive. I can also see AG2R moving to the front as well. They'll be thinking about their Estonian sprinter, Jan Kursipu. It is good to see Lotto Domo riding well on the front end of the main field. Vasseur is the Cofidis rider, but also riding fairly close to the front. I've quite often caught a glimpse there of Baden Cook. You know, Cookie is the kind of rider who's got the acrobatic ability to perform well on a sprint like this today. These long straight roads, though, Phil, I have to say, are not great for the breakaway right now, because, as you said earlier, when you look forward from the main field, you can actually see the helicopter of the television hovering above the breakaway, so you know just exactly how far in front they are.
A very depressing sight, and remember, these riders getting clear at 19 kilometres a day, so they're facing, in fact, 150 in the lead, and they've been up there now for 120. So they're being slowly brought back as the main field. There's an interesting view, Paul. Hope our man operating the camera is still in the main seat.
Well, I hope he's holding on as well, because incredible shots that the cameramen bring to us every day on the road of the Tour de France. But just a minute ago, you were discussing the race distance today, 168 kilometres. Flickinger at the front end of the main field, about to get caught. There is the main field spread across the pavement of the Tour de France here right now. This could be good for Eric Zabel, because as they catch him, as they catch Andy Flickinger, the main field will slow down slightly. Here, look at that quick wheel change for Eric Zabel in the German national champions jersey. His teammates right alongside him right now, Phil. It's going to be a long, hard battle for them. They've got to pace him onto the back end of the main field and then find a way through the peloton to put him back at the front end.
Well, they call back one of the best men there in Daniele Nardello, former champion of Italy, to get him back in that pack, and he's got the legs to do it. Caught at 11 kilometres out, so 138 he led for.
Well, this is the long line of the Telecom riders trying to get Eric Zabel back to the front end of the main peloton. This is so tough to puncture at 11 kilometres to go, but I did notice that at the front end of the main field they had slowed down a fraction, and Eric Zabel is on the back end, but now he's got the difficult job of picking his way through the main field. Lucky for him, Phil, that in fact just at the point that they caught Andy Flickinger, the main field slowed down a fraction, but it's still going to be a complicated ride for Eric Zabel to get to the front of the pack.
That's the big problem, of course. You have to be so skilled to manoeuvre through the traffic here. It is not easy. Riders don't move over and just say, sure, you can go in front of me. They will fight to hold their positions and look with disdain at anybody that taps them on the shoulder. Zabel, though, is seen as a captain of the peloton, and they know what he wants to do. As some will allow him through, others will make it very difficult for him.
The problem is the road is so narrow here right now. There's not very many places that you can actually allow a rider to come forward to the front. A couple of pink jerseys there. That's Team Telecom. They will be looking for their man Eric Zabel, but he's certainly got a hard job. I think he'll make it to the front end of the pack, but that was a rather hot moment for him when he had that flat tire at the side of the road. But as a true professional, did you notice, I know it was very brief, he didn't stop his bike until the moment the team car was right behind him, and he will have indicated with his hand to the mechanic just exactly which wheel it was. He's a great bike rider, real true professional.
That's the thing with an amateur cyclist. He'll be screaming and shouting and generally confusing everybody, but a pro is cool and calm, saving what energy he needs for the adrenaline to get him back in the field.
The thing about a professional, Phil, is he knows he's either going to get back or he's not. There's no other solution.
You're right. Here we go, another banner up the road there. Probably 10 to go now as the pack underneath this one. And indeed it is. And remember, we're now all together here, everybody heading to Meaux together for a big sprint.
10 kilometres to go. This is unbelievable, because right now we're looking at 12 minutes to go, and Eric Zabel still hasn't managed to get himself to the front. The orange jerseys on the right-hand side right now is the organisation coming from Rabobank. Rabobank will be looking for their man, Oscar Freire, 2 times the champion of the world. He will be counting today on the South African rider, Robbie Hunter, to try and set him up for a stage victory. Left-hand side, though, Armstrong riding in the front, as he always does on these flat, dangerous stages. He doesn't want to get involved in any crashes.
Well, it's anybody's race now, Paul, and it looks as though Fassa Bortolo here are in the driving seat. So quite clearly, Alessandro Patacchi, a winner this year of 6 stages of the Giro d'Italia, before he was taken out and eliminated from the race. But you don't lose your prizes when you're eliminated. But obviously, he's had a good rest period. He's had 3.5 weeks to rest, and now he's back into the long race again.
Talented bike rider, a very fast man. He's basically one of the integral members of the Italian squad last year that set Mario Cipollini up to win the World Championships in Zolder. He came back to the Giro d'Italia this year, has been so successful. I think he's on a dream season so far. He could not believe he had the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia. He won so many stages. But watch out for the man there with the yellow bands on the shoulders of his jersey. That's Stuart O'Grady, national road racing champion of Australia, Commonwealth Games road race champion as well. This year, I think Stuart O'Grady has returned to the form that he had a couple of years ago. Let's not forget last season he had a very nasty operation on the iliac artery, which put him out for the early part of the season, but he was still pretty good at the Tour.
Well, I noticed out there, Paul, a Calderola as well, that the orangey coloured jerseys are moving their men forward. Now they've got two good finishers. Fred Rodriguez of the United States, Romans Vane Saints, former world champion, the Latvian on that team, and they were in that sort of secondary flow on the right of the road there, so they too are moving up. This is going to be some sprint finish. Everybody wants to win a stage of the Tour de France, but as we've said earlier, this year being the 100th edition, everybody wants to go in the record books as well.
They do. It's getting desperate now. You can see Fassa Bortolo have done an awful lot of work on the front end of the main field. 121 there in the green and white, in fact, is Christophe Moreau. He will look to try and ride high in the overall classification, but it's the man in the white jersey with the green and yellow bands that just skipped through there, Stuart O'Grady, that he is trying to help out. Look at that. Jan Ulrich, steady as you like at the front end of the main field. There is Zabel just at the top end. He's come to the front end of the main field. He's a great bike rider, Phil. He will not give up. He'll be looking for the sprint win if he can today.
It's taken him 3 miles, 5 kilometres to get back to the front of the group after his flat tyre, but he's coming, and he's still using teammates to get him through. You know, if you ride behind a teammate, you're saving 30% of your energy. Zabel will need to do all of that if he's to take the sprinters on in the last 300 metres.
Well, this could change right now, because once the riders in the pink jerseys know that Eric Zabel has got himself to the front end of the main field, we will see, I believe, the telecom trains start to take over. Bit of confusion right now. Nobody's got the reins of this main field. You see the communication there between the riders. Whenever there's any of this road furniture, they communicate to the riders behind. They do not want any other of their colleagues to go down in an accident. I can see that just a bit further down there, Zabel is in around about 15th position, but he hasn't got too many teammates with him.
Well, I wouldn't think so now. He's used them all up to come up here, which means he'll have to switch his tactics onto looking for other teams with strong riders, what we call the lead-out men, the men that make the pace and then swing off and hope the last man they move over for is their top sprinter, and he will launch for the finish. Now, there's £5,000 or about $7,000 US for the man that wins the stage. If you're planning on winning the Tour de France, you can reckon on winning £250,000, which is very near to $500,000 US. But right now, these boys just want to win the stage. They don't go to the hotel and count the money. It is a prestige thing.
Well, you don't count it until you get to the end in Paris. The most important thing is to survive in a bike race like this. This is a great organisation by the riders in the lime green jerseys, Calderolo. They may be looking after Weinsteins, but maybe even Freddy Gonzalez, who a couple of years ago, the American rider on the Mappe squad, was a man I thought was going to be the next sprinter on the block. On the left there, the Australian national champion, Stuart O'Grady, looking very comfortable as well. This is big Axel Merckx in the middle here. He's looking for Robbie McEwen.
Well, that's good to see. Merckx is a man for the long term, yet he's coming to the front and doing a bit of pacemaking for the little Australian sprinter. Now, still the boys in pink, Zabel's men are off to the right of our picture, and they're looking very twitchy now. They're trying to put Eric into a position.
Alexander Vinokourov is at the front of the main field, looking over his shoulder, very nervous. He wants to find Eric Zabel. McEwen is in about 10th position there. You can see him. He's got the Australian bands on his sleeve. He will be looking for one of his teammates. Looking further down, I still cannot find the position of Eric Zabel. The white jerseys coming forward right now are Française des Jeux. That will be Baden Cook's team, the Australian rider. Oh, those barriers were very close to these bike riders. Christophe Moreau is the man on the front. Had a terrible individual prologue yesterday, 137th for a man who's won the prologue in the past. Today, he's put all that behind him. He's thinking about the team.
Well, this is going to be a very, very nervous first stage end to this Tour de France now. There are so many here. These riders, a lot of riders believe they have a chance at winning. Paolo Bettini, who's not a bad sprinter if he gets a good crack at it, in the green top to his jersey in the centre. 5 kilometres to go now. Here come the Française de Jeu team, the men who are on a high with the morale. They've got McGee in yellow. Tomorrow they'll also have Mangin in the polka dot. They're now looking if they can get cooked for the stage win.
Still nervous. Everybody's looking over. They're looking for their team leaders right now. Christophe Moreau is doing an excellent job on the front end, moving back towards the front here. You can see the team. There is Zabel, the red, yellow and black stripe across his jersey, indicating he's the national champion. A bit of a split in the main field here. There you can see just on the far side the Australian champion Stuart O'Grady. The orange jerseys, that will be Oscar Freira's team, 2 times a champion of the world, a winner of a stage in the Tour de France last year. This is nervous. This is going to be a dangerous sprint on the front. Jan Ullrich himself.
This is a fingertip nervous reaction by these riders now, dodging the traffic furniture as they charge through the outskirts of Meaux, heading for the finish. It is a tricky descent coming up not far away. Then there's a right turn over the river bridge. Then they've got a long approach to the line with an uphill finish. And nobody's ever finished here before because this is a first-time finish. 4 kilometres to go, just over 2 miles.
Brioche La Boulangère moving forward. They've got a pretty good sprinter for Jean-Patrick Nazon. He may well be the man trying to finish it off for them. Française de Jeu are getting themselves organised. This could be one for Baden Cook. We're on the slightly downhill section now, just outside of Meaux, and it's very dangerous in the main field. I tell you one thing, Phil, if you touch your brakes right now, you'll slip down that field and lose 25 places in the peloton.
Well, the riders who've claimed first positions are not going to relinquish them now without a fight, and I probably mean quite literally, because they will be pushing and shoving out of sight of our cameras there as they fight to hold on to their line. And there's a move coming from Cofidis now as they try to also move into position. They have good sprinters too.
That is Médéric Klein from Cofidis, a man we've seen ride very well in the Giro d'Italia in the past, but not far in the middle of all that confusion. I have just seen the man from Germany, Eric Zabel. He's nicely sheltered out of the wind. He's got a teammate up alongside him. It looks like Kessler, the man in the pink jersey, will be looking after him. They're spreading across the road right now. They're touching a speed here. We are approaching 45 miles an hour as we descend into the outskirts of Meaux. There's a nice little right-hand bend just at the end of this straight, and that's when the main field should stretch out into a long line. These riders know it. They've studied it in the book. They're going to charge into this corner at full speed.
Well, there's a little bit of pushing and shoving going on as they go under that 3 kilometres to go banner. Those lime greenish coloured jerseys there are being held by Freddie Rodriguez and Roman Weinstein, trying to be lined up for the sprint for that team out of Italy. But now it looks as though Zabel has said he's getting himself in position, because this is the Telecom team who've got to the front now. And there is a mass of riders trying to get through. There's Baden Cook, the white jersey, going round the corner now. About the best I could identify for you there.
Well, I saw Eric Zabel as well. He's at about 4th position. This is why you have to get into these corners so far to the front, because you can lose so many places in the main field. Any of those guys at the back now have lost all hopes of winning today's stage. It's only the men in the first 20 positions right now. Vinny Calderola are all over their bikes. This is Eddie Mazzolini on the front. He's a man who could finish high in the classification. Today he's riding for the team. Ronan Weinstein is up into 4th place. I haven't seen Freddie Rodriguez up towards the front. Française de Jeu are doing a great job looking after their sprinter Baden Cook. That's what it's like when you've done your turn. You can do no more. The body is hurting at 2 kilometres to go.
Well, I have seen just off to the right there Angelo Furlan from Italy in the Alessio team, but I don't think Freddie Rodriguez has made it. Stuart O'Grady is coming up on the left. He knows now he's got to move into the slipstream of Eric Zabel. Little bit of switching there. Still Mazzolini, he's licking his lips as he tries to lead the line out. There is a chance for Weinstein. I don't think Rodriguez is going to get through.
Well, Robbie McEwen's caught in the back there. He's about 5 positions too far down. Stuart O'Grady is very close up to the front end. Zabel does not have any teammates at all with him, Phil. This is bad for Zabel. He doesn't have the lead out that he normally has. This is going to be a very confusing and dangerous sprint. We're up at 55 kilometres an hour right now. The next flag they will see will be the Flamme Rouge. 1 kilometre to go.
Well, Vino Calderola have made a big mistake here. The team rider on the front's looking around saying, where are my teammates gone? He's leading out the rest of the squad here. Not a good sign. He may as well peel off now, as now Pataki's boys line is up for the finish. Into the 1 kilometre to go. This is a win-all sprint here for about 10 men.
Well, Pataki's got his men there right now. 1st, 2nd, 3rd position. This is the ideal lead out. He'll be in 3rd. Somebody's gone down there. There you can see Bettini on the right-hand left-hand side of the road. Champion of Italy, won that title in a sprint just over 7 days ago. Again, confusion. Nobody's got the power. McEwen, Phil, is up into 3rd place.
McEwen is holding. Bettini also trying to get there on the back wheel of Exorbital. I think Stuart O'Grady has moved too far back, and there's been a mass pileup there. I think it was Towler went down as the peloton completely crashes on the line. It's put forward now about 15 men here, and once again Pataki has missed it. McEwen has missed it. McEwen is still poised for the best sprint here now. It's Robbie Hunter who's launched on the left of our picture, but out there in the centre is still McEwen. Pataki's going Zabel. Here comes Robbie McEwen now, but he's been pushed out of it. Alessandro Pataki is coming like, here comes McEwen and Zabel. I think it's going to be Pataki on the line. Probably Bettini, Zabel, McEwen, they were right there as well. But again, Paul, a crash, and look at this. The peloton are at a standstill. Now, just to quickly tell you the rules, everybody will be given the time of the winner because they are inside the final kilometre.
Yeah, but the 1 or 2 riders, they're seriously injured on the ground there. Now, if Lance Armstrong is in this group at the moment, the referees tonight will give all of the riders who are in the main field at the 1 kilometre to go banner exactly the same time. There should be no change at all. Let's just have a look here and see how that crash went down. It was the big Kelme rider. His foot came out. He went immediately down onto the ground, and then it was pandemonium behind. You can just see over on the left-hand side there, Ulrich was caught out behind the crash as well. But all of the riders behind the crash field today will be given the same time. Now, there's US Postal. There's a lot of confusion there. I wonder whether or not Lance Armstrong was involved in that crash.
Well, let's certainly hope he was not. But I think the rider that went down was Towler of the Kelme squad, first to go. And then a massive, massive pileup. Now, overall, the shoulders, there he is. And he was obviously involved there, Brad McGee. But he won't lose his yellow jersey. He's inside the last kilometre. This rule was brought in many years ago because of situations like this in the last kilometre, so they don't lose time. The clock stops at the kilometre to go for all of the riders who are together in the event of a fall. McGee quite clearly has fallen, but he'll still keep his yellow jersey.
Well, what a crash that was towards the end, and that's all it takes when you're full on at 65 kilometres an hour. You just do not have time to get out of the way. The majority of the main field is starting to come in right now, and I'm not sure whether or not Lance Armstrong was just stopped at the side of the road. There are 1 or 2 riders there, Phil, who have been seriously injured by that crash. They will get the same time as the winner at the end of the day. But I tell you one thing, this looks as if this could very well be Jimmy Casper, who's been caught up with a fairly nasty crash there. He will have taken a lot of risks to be towards the front.
But I think he's okay. It is a normal precaution to put him in a neck brace. It doesn't mean that he has a serious injury, and he was quite conscious. There's the crash as we see it.
Tell you what, an awful lot of riders have gone down there. That was a very dramatic crash. We do not know whether or not Lance Armstrong was involved in that crash, because we saw an awful lot of riders from the US Postal Service standing together, and that would indicate that probably their leader, Lance Armstrong, was involved in that accident, caught up with the majority of the rest of the riders in the main field. But in theory, there should be no change overall.
Well, we had drama yesterday. We've had an incredibly dramatic end to stage 1. We can now go straight over to Ned Boulting, who is with David Miller at the finish.
David, we had all sorts of drama yesterday, all sorts of drama again today. Did you see anything of what happened behind you?
Well, that was just in front of me. Well, I didn't see anything. I was just chilling at the back. I knew it was going to crash, just knew it. So I was just sitting just behind all the favourites, just keeping it safe. I think every single favourite went down. It was pretty impressive. So I was just behind, just watching them go down one by one. It was like...
So you managed to find a chilled path and you managed to find your way around?
Down, just taking my time, stepped through, came through. It was fine. Yeah, one of the joys of like not stressing about being in yellow. I was just a bit behind, just relaxing.
So basically, you put all your troubles behind you from yesterday. We read that you were pretty angry in the press this morning.
Yeah, I still am angry. Still, it's probably one of the worst days I've ever had. Like, my life, actually. It was horrible this morning. It's been a horrible day. It's been a horrible, horrible, horrible day. Can't even imagine. We watched looking at the Keep, the newspaper, and that huge front photo with Brad on the front in the Eiffel Tower. It was just like, should have been me. It was just, it's been a long 24 hours.
I'm sure it has, David. Thanks ever so much.
All right.
Well, thankfully, David Miller not involved in any controversy and any mechanical problems today. He's avoided that crash, but riders are still coming in. Some of them are walking over the line, and we have seen a Française de Jure rider down on the ground in a neck brace. So that's obviously the big story of the day. Well, I'm joined by a man who knows what it's like to be in dangerous bunch sprints, a former Tour winner, Stephen Roach. You drove in on the race route today and told me even before that happened that you thought it was very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Like for the first day of a Tour de France, everybody's very excited, very nervous. Everybody wants to win a stage, everybody wants to stay upright. But because the itinerary itself is all in a lot of urban areas, there's a lot of traffic islands, jumps and everything else to be avoided. And coming in those roads at some nearly 40 miles an hour, as Paul was saying earlier on, it's nearly impossible to avoid all. When you've got 200 charging cyclists coming into the town with all on a mission to bring their team leader to the front, or team leaders wanting to win the stage, it's very dangerous. And the roads are not wide enough either, I don't think really, to justify a huge big field coming in.
Well, the stage was won in the end by Alessandro Patacchi ahead of Robbie McEwen and Eric Zabel. But the big story, of course, is the crash, and we will have more on it for you after this break.
G'day, I'm Robbie McEwen, and you're watching the Tour de France on ITV.
It's a rabbit that makes Robinson's fruit and barley taste so smooth. No, it's a dinosaur who hunted for fruit. To make it really smooth, he got barley, then crushed it together with the steamroller. And that's why Robinson's fruit and barley is the smoothest in the universe.
Casper, it's me. Yeah, listen, I've got the test results back. Some sort of lice. Lice. Well, these things can jump 6 foot, apparently. Yeah. They live in the air and then burrow right under the skin. Lay their eggs in the follicles. No, the follicles. Look, I can hardly hear you, mate. Excuse me.
Some chats are better from home.
Yeah, he's well on the mend. Special powders worked a treat. Isn't it, mate, eh?
Kids have just 3 words for shreddies. Yummy, yummy, and yummy. Even big kids. Shreddies. Kids just love them.
New moisturising Link shower shakes. Handle with care.
New recipe kits from Knorr
Have you been?
have all the extras you need to create a tasty, authentic meal. Our tikka masala comes with tikka paste, tikka sauce, basmati rice, mango chutney, and even mini poppadoms.
Hope you're hungry.
Starving.
That was delicious, thank you.
Really?
Hot toast?
Fantastic.
Oh, civilised, thank you.
Love these.
Ah, that's nice. Lemony.
New Knorr recipe kits, all the extras you'll ever need.
Sure for men. Knocks out sweat and odour. Till the end of the day.
Welcome to the really strange world of my parents.
Has anyone seen my keys?
Parents are weird.
You are not going out looking like a hedgehog.
Oh.
They do weird things.
Oh, look, can you leave it at home?
Come on now.
Luckily, Pizza Hut does weird.
An edge for us.
Weird.
And a medium pan for the kids, please.
Phew.
Feed the whole family with any 2 medium pizzas for $12.99 at Pizza Hut.
It's amazing I turned out as long as I have.
Hi, I'm Fred Rodriguez. You're watching Tour de France on ITV.
Welcome back. The end of stage 1 of the Centenary Tour de France has brought drama for the second day running. Alessandro Petacchi won the stage ahead of Robbie McEwen and Eric Zabel, but the big story, the crash. With me is Stephen Roach. Stephen, talk us through the final stages of that, because as you said before, it was a dangerous finish.
It was a very dangerous finish, and with the curve going around towards the right, I think Gutierrez basically pulled his foot out of the pedal on mid-corner, and going at that speed, probably...
I mean, what's everybody doing now? Everybody's jockeying for position.
Everybody's jockeying for position. People are jockeying to bring the leaders out. The leaders are watching other leaders, other sprinters. Then you've got guys like Gutierrez trying to stay out of trouble. So here's the right-hand corner here. You see it going around. Gutierrez goes wide here. There, see, he goes wide. See him going down there. His right foot came out of the pedal. He swerved a bit, back into the middle of the peloton, and brought down everybody else with him. So going at 45 miles an hour, it's impossible to break in time. It's impossible to avoid. We saw Dave Miller talking us through earlier on, that's like he basically avoided it, but it's practically impossible to avoid coming down.
And then it was down to the big boys at the front who'd avoided the crash.
Yeah, and we see basically the main sprinters were all there, so they were all staying out of trouble. But unfortunately, some of the main Tour contenders were all grouped just behind them, and they were nearly all involved in the crash.
Now, Paul Sherwin mentioned it, but just clarify this for us. Because it's inside the last kilometre, none of these riders lose time.
No. Once you go under the final kilometre flag, you're credited at the same time as the leader, the winner of the stage. If you're 100 metres off the back before the kilometre sign, when you arrive, you're given the same time, which your time was, as at the kilometre flag.
Now, there's no Mario Cipollini in this year's race, which is controversial for its own reasons, but one thing Mario Cipollini's team always does is control the race, because they're at the front trying to lead him out. Is the fact that he's not here this year mean that it's a bit more of a free-for-all, and perhaps, you know, we're more likely to see crashes?
Not so much really, because Petacchi has a very good team with Bartolo. Lotto have a very good team as well for McEwen. There are some very good sprinters teams in there at the moment. I don't know today why nobody really took on the race the same as like the Mario Cipollini's team would normally take it on. It was very disappointing by times, because it's nice to see one team leading out the whole team of sprinters before coming to the line, but today it didn't happen. We thought Zabel would have had a better lead out from his teammates, but today Zabel was basically on his own in the final.
Now that's interesting, because he's obviously a 6 times winner of the green jersey. Robbie McEwen took it off him last year. He didn't seem to have any of his usual support today.
None of his main lead-out men were there in the finish. Whether they were all down the crash or not, we don't know. But or is there a bit of friction in the telecom team? Because every year for the last 2 or 3 years, there's always been a bit of friction between the teammates. Do we ride for Zabel, or who do we ride for? So this could be the same thing again this year.
Okay. Now, let's have another look at this replay, because, as you say, Gutierrez takes his foot out of the pedal. Now, in your day, you'd have had your pedal tightly strapped up. These are clipped in. Is that his fault or the mechanic's fault?
Well, it's very difficult to say. On the automatic pedals, there's a certain little screw in the back of it where you can set the tension on it. Normally, when you're a professional cyclist, the normal tension is normally to the medium tension. I can't see that being a problem, really. Maybe the spring on it maybe broke, Maybe he just made a false movement and his foot came out. But generally it never happens. But unfortunately it happens in the wrong time.
All right, thanks, Stephen. The presentations are underway. There's Alessandro Petacchi on the podium. Let's join Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin to see the presentations.
Surprise, he is smiling, Alessandro Petacchi here. He's conquered some of the great finishes, men who will do battle daily when the roads permit them in this year's Tour de France.
Well, this will in fact make the Italians very happy, because in last year's Tour de France they only got themselves 1 stage victory, and that went to this man's teammate Dario Frigo, who won stage 17, and that was a mountain stage. And in fact, the year before, Phil, Italy didn't get a stage win at all in the Tour de France, so they're going to be rejoicing with that win by this man, who they regard as their great future star, possibly the man to replace Mario Cipollini.
Well, he'd never won a stage of the Tour of Italy until this year. He kept finishing 2nd to Cipollini. Now he's won 6th in this year's Giro d'Italia, and he'd never won a stage of the Tour de France until today. This is the 2nd time he's run the race. The last time, 2001, he finished 97th. it's not where they finish in Paris to these sprinters, it's just winning stages. So he'll feel totally ready now for the next 3 weeks in the saddle.
And he'll be relaxed. He's got a very good chance of getting out and getting himself another stage win tomorrow, because it's a fairly flat stage. But despite the chaos at the finish, despite being involved in that accident, Brad McGee is still the leader of this bike race by an extended margin right now, Phil, because he got himself 4 seconds out on the course.
He licked his lips there, the thought of pulling on the maillot jaune for the second day. He's a long way away from the record for an Australian. That's held by Phil Anderson. I think it's about 18 days, not quite 15 days, I think it is, for Phil Anderson in the 80s. But it's a good start for this young man. And I have to say now that Brad McGee here, we pretty certainly went down in the crash, but I took a good look at him when he crossed the line, and we did not see any signs of a scratch or traces of blood on him. So I think it was a pretty simple fall, or he was simply delayed. But we do think he fell off his bike, because there's the pictures being pushed home by a teammate. It's not been all good news today, because Jimmy Casper, his sprinter teammate, seemed to be the worst injured in that crash, and they put a neck brace on him. So that's routine when you have an injury. So I think he'll be okay. There we are, Paul. What a great ride that was, though. Brad is going to be, the dream continues.
Well, the dream continues, but I think what it does put into perspective is everybody says, oh, Lance Armstrong is going to win the Tour de France for a 5th time. Something like that can happen on any one of the 23 days to come, and Armstrong will be aware of that and attentive of that. That's why his team is so important. They're always around him, always protecting him to keep him out of that kind of danger.
And this is why riders never commit, no matter how far ahead they are. Remember, in 1971, Lewis O'Connor was nearly 10 minutes ahead of Eddie Merckx. Lewis O'Connor crashed out the Tour, Eddie Merckx won. Here we are, back on the podium. The green jersey was on loan to David Miller all day, because he was second yesterday in the prologue, which means that McGee couldn't wear green. So the green jersey now, rightfully the owner of Robbie McEwen, who won that competition last year, while his countryman, Bradley McGee, signs autographs on his version of the maillot jaune. The maillot vert is on the shoulders of Robbie McEwen. There's 7 Australians in this race. You think there are about 150 of them.
Unbelievable. They are so dominant, so aggressive, but let's not forget, they have to travel an awful long way from home to come here to get themselves a lead in a competition like this.
Well, there's a look at the stage result. Alessandro Patacchi in just ahead of Robbie McEwen and Eric Zabel, with the teammate of the yellow jersey, Baden Cook, who could have taken the yellow jersey if he'd got among the bonus points today in the first 3 places, coming in just outside them in 4th. No real change in the overall standings, though. Brad McGee still in the yellow jersey, despite crashing in the final kilometre, of course. He gets the same time as the rest of the pack. David Miller second, Jan Ulrich still in 4th. The only real change in the top 10 is Andy Flickinger for his exploits today. He moves himself up into 7th at the expense of Lance Armstrong, who's pushed down to 8th. So Alessandro Patacchi gets the stage. Robbie McEwen, though, gets the green jersey. He's the defending champion. It's a sprinters' week, traditionally the first week. How do you see the rest of it panning out?
Well, I reckon tomorrow's a very flat stage again, up to Sedan. And I reckon because of McEwen's performance today, he knows now that his main client is not actually going to be Zabel, maybe Patacchi, because Patacchi won 6 stages in the Giro. So he's shown he's really on form. So I reckon tomorrow, when it comes into the final, the Lotto might leave the Fazer Bartolo team to ride in the front, in the hope that maybe McEwen might get a better lead out, because today he hadn't got a very good lead out.
And what about Brad McGee? I mean, he's in the yellow jersey at the moment, but he obviously knows he's not going to carry it all the way to Paris. His long-term interest is the green jersey. He might be another Australian interest in that competition.
I think Bradley may be a little bit young at the moment. He's a good rider. He's a very good all-around rider, except in the climbs he hasn't to prove himself as yet. But as regards sprinting, he's a good sprinter, but nothing like McEwen as yet. McEwen has got a lot of experience behind him.
OK, thanks a lot. I believe Ned has Brad McGee. Let's get right over to him.
Brad, congratulations. You've hung on to the yellow jersey, but my God, they were dramatic circumstances, weren't they?
In the final, yeah. I mean, I was sort of just saying to a couple of guys in the bunch that it seemed pretty calm for a first stage of the Tour de France. You know, normally it's just madness. And then we just seen a massive crash like that, it's not the sort of things you want to see, but you know, it's going to keep happening. It's just one of those things.
Did you escape unscathed? It looked for 1 minute like you might have been injured.
Yeah, I thought I got through it. I was diving left, diving right, you know, heading for the barricades, moved left. At one moment I thought I got out scot-free, and then someone cleaned me up from behind. I went straight over the hangers and landed on my head and shoulder. And you know, I thought I was in a bit of bad way, but I looked around me and there's some boys in real bad way, so I you know, stopped whinging.
So it looks on some of the pictures like you might have hurt your leg. Have you got a cut there?
Oh, just some cuts and bruises. I took most of it on my head, which is fortunate, you know, with the helmet on. So my shoulder's also a problem. I've dislocated a couple of times this year, and it's okay. I'm fine. I've had plenty worse.
So otherwise, how did you enjoy your day? How did you get on? I mean, you got points early on in the race.
Yeah, I decided to really give it some in that first sprint, just to show that I'm up to really hold on to this jersey. And then we slipped Morzine into the break. He took the climber's jersey. We defended the whole day without even riding on the front. It was perfect, you know, it just went exactly the plan. And we're back in yellow for another day.
I'll tell you what, I guess you're sort of enjoying wearing that colour.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the first 100k slipped by. I didn't even touch the pedals. I think this thing rides by itself.
Are you going to hang on to it tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, we're up for as long as we can get it, you know.
Okay, thanks very much, Frank.
Brett, tell us, have you seen what... Well, he says he's going to try and hold on to it. Can Frances Desjeux actually defend that jersey with such a small gap?
Well, tomorrow they should be able to defend it, I think. But the team time trial then is on Wednesday. So I reckon they should be able to hold on for Wednesday, I'd say. But he must take a hat off to Brad McGee, because when his attitude...
Having got full value for money out of its Paris weekend tour package, the race heads northeast to menace the Belgian border with some traditional first week sprint finishes. The matching skin suits will be out for the team time trial on stage 4. Then the collective foot goes back down as the race rushes south to pay its respects to the tour's first ever stage finish town. In 1903, it took the winner Maurice Garand 17 hours to ride the 476 kilometres from Paris to Lyon. This year, the pack takes the scenic route, 1,000 kilometres in 7 days. From Lyon, the race heads into the Alps, a greatest hits package of classic climbs from Tour history, where Lance Armstrong's status as favourite will be underlined or undermined. The high points will be the Izoard, the Galibier, and Alpe d'Huez, which you can see live on ITV next Sunday afternoon. The second of the Tour's 1903 stage finishes was the port city of Marseille. On this year's itinerary, it's stage 10. And after a day's shore leave in Narbonne, there's more historical sightseeing in Toulouse. The Tour's first individual time trial comes on stage 12 to cap Découverte. Then it's another 3 days of gradients and grimacing in the Pyrenees, culminating in the climb up to Les Ardiden, where Jan Ullrich conceded the race to Armstrong 2 years ago. Bordeaux has hosted the Tour more times than any town outside Paris. This year, as always, it'll be a classic sprinter stage for those sprinters still left in the race. Heading north, the second individual time trial will finish in the last of the Tour's original 1903 stage towns, Nantes, before the historical circle is completed on the sacred cobbles of the Champs-Élysées 3 weeks today. Now, according to Lance Armstrong's best-selling autobiography, it's not about the bike. Then he doesn't have to buy his own, does he? Anyway, Lance is the subject of our competition, and we're bowling underarm with this question. We want to know how many times in succession Lance Armstrong has won the Tour. Is it 2, 4 or 6? 09001 22 9922 is the number to call, and lines close at midnight next Saturday. First correct answer out of the hat wins this superb Trek 1000 bike. And for 5 runners-up, there are copies of the official pieces together the wreckage of yesterday's crash. We'll have the latest medical bulletins on the casualties and the latest casualty of the controversy over David Miller's time trial problems.
Phil and Paul will be fielding your emails. We'll have all the action from another flat, fast stage.
Evening all, welcome to ITV2's Daily Tour highlights. Now, we counted them all out from Paris yesterday, but in the end it was impossible to count them all back.
McEwen is holding, Bettini also trying to get there on the back wheel of Exorbital. I think Stuart O'Grady has moved too far back, and there's been a mass pile-up there. I think it was Towler that went down as the peloton completely crashes on the line.
Now, in the chaotic aftermath of yesterday's crash, there were official declarations that a number of riders had been forced to abandon due to the injuries they'd sustained. But in the Tour, the only way of knowing for certain is to head down to the start the next morning armed with your list of riders and do a helmet count.
The first man brought down was the French sprinter Jimmy Casper, and he was the first declared casualty of the crash as he headed to hospital in a neck brace. Once he'd established that nothing was broken, though, he insisted on continuing. Tyler Hamilton was also scratched from the lineup last night, but he decided to go on once he'd established something was broken, namely his collarbone. It sounds incredible, but he's actually done it before, riding most of last year's Giro with a fracture of the same bone and finishing second. The other big American name, Levi Leipheimer, has a broken hip though, and he definitely is out, along with his teammate Mark Lotz, who had very nasty facial injuries. Remarkably though, they were the only non-starters this morning, so it's official, Easter Monday in France is now the first week of July. And once the medical bulletins were out of the way, the focus turned to the cause of the crash. Yesterday, it looked as though Jose Enrique Gutierrez had simply lost control on the bend and pulled his foot out of the pedal. But careful examination of the replay seems to show that he was nudged off his line by another rider.
Tengo muy claro que yo seguí en la línea recta y iba remontando por la parte izquierda cuando un corredor del Cofidis, que luego vi por televisión que era Medic Klein, me sale de repente, cambia bruscamente de su trayectoria y bueno, se me echa encima, me toca la rueda delantera con su rueda trasera y yo ya no puedo hacer nada, ni puedo controlar la bici.
Non, en fait, moi j'ai juste doublé Gutiérrez par l'extérieur et après donc il y avait la place pour que je sois juste devant lui, mais en aucun cas j'ai fait une erreur ou un coup de patin comme on m'a dit. J'ai pas freiné, rien du tout. Je pense que c'est les aléas du sprint, mais si vraiment j'avais senti que je faisais une erreur, je l'aurais dit. Moi, je me sens pas du tout responsable de cette chute. Maintenant, c'est vrai que c'est bête pour qu'il y ait une chute, mais non, je pense pas que ça soit moi qui fasse la première faute, quoi. Maintenant qu'on me dise que ça soit moi qui le fasse, ça me fait chier, quoi, parce que c'est pas vrai.
Pero bueno, yo creo que tampoco hay que tratar de echar la culpa a nadie, ni yo tampoco voy a decir nada al corredor del Cofidis, porque aunque no es una acción muy sensata por su parte, pero creo que igual que le pasa a él, les puede pasar a cualquiera, ¿no? Que estamos todos en el mismo ajo, como decimos los españoles, y le puede pasar igual que le pasa a él, otro día le puede pasar a otro. Hay mucha tensión, todo el mundo quiere estar adelante y bueno, son riesgos que corremos y que hay que correrlos.
So that clears that up, which just leaves us with the Lightning Reflexes Award for BMX stunt riding, which goes to July Sallanches in the orange colours of Euskaltel Euskadi, who managed to stay upright by bunny hopping his way over two fallen riders and finished unhurt. Now, fortunately, neither David Miller nor any of his teammates were injured in yesterday's crash, although, as we've seen, Cofidis have become so adept at shooting themselves in the foot these days, they hardly need any outside help. And the latest man seen limping away from the fiasco of Saturday's time trial with a bullet hole in his shoe is team manager Alain Bondou. Now, it's been clear for a while that David Miller and his team manager don't really get along. Bondou thinks Miller doesn't always ride to the full extent of his impressive ability. Miller doesn't seem to respect Bondou's ability as a hands-on team manager. Saturday's decision to leave the front derailleur off David's bike, which ultimately cost him the yellow jersey, brought the power struggle to a head, and Miller seems to have won it, with sporting decisions being taken out of Bondou's control and handed to another member of staff.
Has there been more developments in your team?
Oh, lots apparently. I've got to read the newspapers. I've got to see what I've been saying. I'm not sure.
What do you know about the changes?
No, we've got Francis van Landersel, my direct sportif, my preferred, who's become like mainly the main boss, and Alain Bondou, who's been moved slightly to the side, removed of some of his duties.
Okay.
Which is what I wanted.
So what is Alain's role now?
He's doing exactly what his role is: general manager, logistical manager. And Francis van Landersel takes all the sport direction decisions, which is the way it should be.
And the mechanics are the same?
The mechanics are the same. I like mechanics, they made a mistake, but they're human.
David Miller beginning to sound like the Cofidis player-manager there. Anyway, here's a look at today's route, 204.5 kilometres, with the 0.5 today reassuringly straight and wide for the sprint. Although, as ever, there are some twists and turns getting to it. Brad McGee in yellow for the second day and looking to do not a great deal more than stay out of trouble. Staying out of any more trouble, of course, absolutely imperative for Tyler Hamilton. The prospect of a second fall on a broken collarbone, too nasty to contemplate. Lance Armstrong, by the way, declared himself none the worse for having come off behind yesterday's crash, which in the end had no real impact on the top of the standings. It's still McGee from David Miller with only 10 seconds covering the top 5 places. In fact, the top 7, as we'll see in a moment. How long Tyler Hamilton is going to be able to hold on to 6th, though, remains to be seen. Lance Armstrong is 8th. Levi Leipheimer, by the way, was lying 13th before he crashed out. Along with Hamilton, Jimmy Casper is pedalling the fine line between courage and reckless disregard for personal safety. And a reminder of just how fine a line it is came at what should be the safest spot in the race, up at the front where a two-man breakaway had formed. Frédéric Finot of Jean de la Tour and Credit Agricole's Lilian Jégou were enjoying a 5-minute lead, and the TV close-ups that come with it. And the close-up got too close, and Jégou clipped the camera cable as he went past the TV motorbike. And if we run it again, you can see just how close we came to something much more serious. One of the race cars coming within inches of Jégou's head and ending up in a farmer's field. Fabio Baldato, who needed a tendon in his hand stitching after yesterday's crash, also came off again, along with Uwe Peschel, but both of them remounted and got back into the race. Now, the two leaders were obviously mopping up the first 2 places in the intermediate sprints as they went along, but that still left the 2 points for 3rd place. And Robbie McEwen took them at the second sprint of the day to extend his lead over Alessandro Patacchi to 3 in the green jersey competition. As we pick up the action now, the two-man break has a lead of just over 5 minutes on the pack, and they're approaching the 3rd and final intermediate sprint of the day.
Hand up there. I'm not sure whether that's a problem for Jégou. It may well be a softening tyre, but I don't think he's going to take the glory away from Frédéric Finot. Finot has been allowing Jégou the privilege of going first over the small hills, and
nice and wide and flat for the moment, and he's picking up a rather interesting tailwind, which will help him keep his pace up to pretty much around the 45 to 50 kilometers an hour, which is what he needs if he's going to survive the onslaught of the main field.
Well, these two, Paul, just going under that 20 kilometers to go banner, and Danilo De Luca here is in all sorts of trouble and is just wanting to get to the finish and see the race doctor, I think.
Well, it's tough for a man like this because he's a man with a big reputation. He's a very good bike rider, and sad to see him off the back end of the main field. Telecom sending 4 men to the front right now. Rolf Aldag is the man moving forward there into 1st position. Daniel Nardello is up here as well, and in fact it seems as if Quick Step are sending a couple of riders to the front end of the main field too. Maybe Paolo Bettini feels that he's got a chance of getting himself the win. There's Jan Ullrich on the right-hand side. Ullrich has amazed me so far in this year's Tour. He finished 1st in the opening day prologue, Phil, and then after that he's riding at the front like a serious contender. It'll be interesting to see how he handles the first few days in the mountains.
Yes, it will be very, very interesting. This was going to be an interesting Tour right from day one. We always felt it, and it's deservedly so in its 100th year. This man is not yet safe. We can't talk about him yet as the winner of the day stage or the next leader of the jersey, because the peloton, with something like for him about 8 miles to run, there we are, just over 7.5 miles to go, 13.5 kilometers, is still really in with a chance, but also in with a chance of being caught. 3:24 is the latest time coming from our satellite system on the computer, and he's not going to want to know any more information now, Paul. He's just going to hurt himself and ride as best he can.
It's got to be maximum right now, absolutely full on all the way to the finish. And I tell you, after escaping into 5 kilometers into the race, his body is screaming out at him to stop, please, but he can't, because at the situation right now, he is the new yellow jersey on the road. All he has to do is cross the line, even just a fraction in front of the main field. If he gets the win, he'll also get himself the yellow jersey, and Jean de la Tour could never have dreamed about that possibility before the start of this year's Tour de France. And what a glory that would be, because he would almost certainly keep it on tomorrow's stage, and then more than likely lose it when we go into the team time trial the day after.
Now it's a crash in the peloton. Here it is. And this is going to disrupt the chase even more, and let's hope there's nobody injured, but there's been a pile-up, a touch of wheels right at the centre of the peloton again. There's plenty of bikes down, Paul, and what now? There's one rider in the middle there not looking at all good.
Somebody's gone down very hard.
It's Cofidis, is it?
There's a couple of riders gone down there from Vinny Calderolo, and it'll be interesting to see who that is.
Well, it's not Freddie Rodriguez, the American rider on the team. He's just looking for a bike, this rider, and in fact now we can see his number. It's Andriotto, Dario Andriotto. It's another Calderola rider who is down, and I don't think, and this is a Gerolsteiner rider, is it? Yes. It looked to me as though I don't think it was Thomas Lisa. I just caught a glimpse of his number. I think the Gerolsteiner rider there.
Thomas Lisa it was.
It is Thomas Lisa,
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Thomas Lisa who's gone down pretty hard. You can see he's well ripped up there. And
first Tour de France for Thomas. Looks a little bit shaken, but I think he's okay.
There's the race doctor, Gerard Porte, immediately on hand to make sure everybody's okay. The Vinny Calderola rider there, still sitting at the side of the road, looks as if he's come off the worst. And in fact, both of them look pretty badly shaken up.
Well, in fact, that Vino Calderola rider is Marco Milesi. Now I can see him a bit better. And he looks as though he's quite badly stunned. And Gerard Porte is just checking him out there, making sure he's compos mentis. Rather a nasty right knee injury there, Porte. Looks like might require a couple of stitches. Remember, to carry on, you've got to finish the stage, and there's no time like yesterday where you get the same time as the race because you are too far away, more than 1 kilometre away.
Well, he is just surviving for the moment. You see him getting down into that very low profile position. He still looks exceptionally strong here. His gap is coming down slightly and on a regular basis, but he's really found something quite special here to hold off the onslaught of the main field. The gap coming down all of the time now. The next time check we're getting is just around about 2.5 minutes. The banner you can see there will indicate 10 kilometres to go. He has to lose a minute every 5 kilometres.
When you're as tired as he is, Paul,
it's all possible.
It's all possible, isn't it? And these little rises now are making those legs scream with pain. The lactic acid must be pumping. He has to go over these climbs. There's the peloton, Paul. To me, it looks as though they've stopped racing. It may be the gentleman agreement coming in here and allowing dropped riders to rejoin. This is Marco Milesi, the worst injured. A few bandages quickly slapped onto that knee and get him to the finish, and then the doctors will have a proper look at him.
Well, information will go around pretty quickly in the main field that none of the major contenders were involved in that crash at all. So I don't think they'll switch off the pacemaking all that much at the front end of the peloton. After all, we are at 10 kilometres to go, and that's when you throw the gentleman's agreement out of the window. You've got to keep the pressure on.
I'm afraid you're right. This rider here, though, will know nothing of what's going on behind him, except he will know that the sprinters' teams will be driving now, and driving as fast as their legs will carry them. And his legs, to me, aren't going to carry him much further. He must be exhausted.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Frédéric Finot. Regardez le tour sur ITV.
$10,000, $100,000, $1 million. It doesn't matter how many corners your tyres take this year. What really matters is that your tyres grip the road corner after corner every time. That's why at Michelin we're committed to producing performance that lasts. Michelin, high performance, time and again.
Give your home a lift this year with some new blinds from Velux. Easy to fit and designed to last, our fantastic new range comes in every colour and style imaginable. Perfect for Velux roof windows. For details of all our new Velux blinds, call 08700 60 70 10.
I used to think credit cards were all the same. Until I got this one from the Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, I'll pay 0% for 6 months. Then to 16.9% APR after that. on everything I buy, and balance transfers too. And the really great thing is, by using my card, I could earn myself something a bit special.
A credit card from the Royal Bank of Scotland now gives you air miles to spend on great days out or even a trip abroad. And you'll pay 0% for the first 6 months. To apply, call 0800 16